was born.
To speak out against her father is almost unheard of. Losing his approval means losing a path to heaven, and her betrayal means a diminished kingdom for him in the afterlife. Still, Flora can't bear to remain silent.
I told everybody who he was then, and I kept telling.
She tells church members, extended family, and teachers.
We would have to go down to St. George, which is a 45-minute drive away from Colorado City, and I'd walk up to people in the store and say, my dad's molesting me, and walk away. I just wanted people to know. I could feel myself fading, and I knew that sooner or later I wasn't going to exist anymore. And I didn't want to leave my sisters unprotected.
Flora's cries for help go on for 2 more years, but her efforts get her nowhere.
Every time I tell, I'd get kicked out of me. Every time I would tell somebody about what Dad was doing, I'd get rebaptized. I was rebaptized 9 times because the sin was mine, not his.
I want to stop right there. The reason why that I'm wanting to disclose this program is because today marks a monumental day in my life whenever someone important in my life had passed away by the name of Lenore Willis. Lenore Willis lived right down the road from where we lived and was married to a J.M. Willis that, I'm not going to lie, to this day I still have feelings of remorse in regards how come them as adults did not tell or maintain or try to help our family status in the degree towards what was going on with my father, my mother, and us other 3 sons. My father would basically use the scripture out of the Bible that if you spared the rod, you would spoil the child, to justify the beatings that he would give his family, the boys as well as myself. And then there at the last, whenever I wanted to go to church, become saved at the age of 12, Baptist church, whenever my father would want something done outside, even on Sunday, he started making an appointment. Well, Dennis, doesn't your Bible tell you that you're to honor your father and your mother? And I'd say, yes, Daddy, it does say that. Of course, I didn't know how to respond towards the twisted mindset that he was trying to throw at me. But he would say, well, I'm ordering you for you to stay at home. I don't want you to go to church today because we got chores to have to do. We've got lots of stuff out here that we have to do. And he would use the Bible in benefit of himself just so that he could either beat us or that he could get his way manipulative towards us working on Sunday, knowing that we all should have been going to church on Sunday. Whenever it comes to the devil's deceit, whenever it comes to the devil's snares, whenever it comes to the devil's wickedness, there is no end towards how far that Satan and those who have been possessed by Satan will go. Yes, I had feelings about Lenore Willis passing away today, towards being buried in the Alamo Baptist Church. But I've also grown up as an adult, and I've come back to this community, and I've asked various people, how come you didn't speak up in our defense whenever we were just little bitty children? And a lot of them's response was, well, we didn't want to get our teeth knocked down our throat. And then they would come back with another response, well, we was always taught to mind our own business in this community. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, at the expense of watching children be destroyed by somebody that had post-traumatic stress disorder, by coming out of World War II and turning his back on God and becoming basically a monster. That's the reason why I wanted you to listen to part of this program in regards to this poor woman who went through similar circumstances, but rather than her being beat, she was being raped. She was being molested. She was being taken advantage of. And the fact of the matter is, Satan can come at his children in defiance, towards out to kill, steal, and destroy in many different ways, on many different levels, is the reason why that I wanted you to listen to part of this story today. I sent the family in Eunice's of their loss a gift in full condolences, giving condolences of the family's loss today, because trying to display gentleness and forgiveness, but at the same time also displaying firmness in what had occurred in this community that wasn't right. You know, whenever you're caught in between a hard place and a rock, sometimes it's extremely difficult to do the right thing. And sometimes you have to really, really walk that tight line of really not really knowing where the right way is to go. Because originally, whenever I moved back here in 2014, of course, I had multiple reasons for coming back, and one of them was to help the neighborhood. But another one was in case a loved one, such as Lenore Willis, or there's been others around here that has passed away, even Layman Jacobs, that I refuse to go down here in Alamo Baptist Church, or First Baptist Church in Cydonia, or the Assembly of God Church up here in Cydonia. I refuse to go to their funerals because of the feelings in the neighborhood that I know are still very resentful and very remorseful because of me saying and flaring up about the past. And it's really, really sad whenever you can't say your goodbyes to those that, yes, at one time I had a deep, deep perfection and a deep, deep longing for Miss Lenore Willis, because she took my mother back and forth to work almost 30 years to Kelwood Rutherford factory, knowing every integral detail of our lives, as well as us knowing theirs. Whenever it comes to burying the hatchet, sometimes the hatchet is difficult to bury, especially once the hatchet has become so humongous or big in one's life. So as you listen to the rest of these intricate details of what went on in this female's life, please remember the works of Satan are real. And it's only by and through the hand of God that people such as this, as well as myself, has been able to tell our tales and tell the rest of the world to be careful. But at the same time, tell the rest of the world, watch out. Be prepared. Especially whenever it comes to children. Please listen.
Everybody in town knew my dad was molesting me.
Essentially, the local authorities are members of the FLDS, or if not members, their livelihood depends on the FLDS, and so they will look away from what's going on. It's incredible that this is going on in broad daylight, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it.
And still to this day going on in the 21st century here in America, because if you're not the right person that's being abused, you basically don't stand a snowball chance in hell towards being redeemed or reformed from the sins that your parents or your cousins or your uncles or your aunts is committing upon to your lives, based upon the community and based upon how grounded that the community is with law enforcement, including your judges, your probation officers, your district attorneys, etc., etc., etc. And yes, this still goes on today in various pockets here in America, depending upon where you are and who you are. where you are and who you are. And you think that God's justice is not justice whenever God brings retribution down upon a society like he has brought upon this society towards us being perverted and sick? Oh yes, there's a reason why. Whenever God puts his foot down, it's the reason why that God puts his foot down. Whenever enough of it is going on throughout a nation, that's whenever you see things be disorderly, perplexed, and taken out of context the way that they are pertaining to floods, famines, natural catastrophes, weather events, shootings, protest, defunding, white-black segregation issues and discrimination issues, and us being $25 trillion in debt and over almost 3 million people incarcerated in federal, state, and local jails here throughout this nation. Whenever a nation becomes this perplexed and out of order, that's whenever you see the man upstairs bringing in all kinds of horror and all kinds of humiliation, such as drug abuse. All these shootings and killings that happened just this past weekend, on the 4th of July weekend, had shootings, almost 100 shootings in Chicago alone, in the city of Chicago. The people in Atlanta, the mayor had to put out the National Guard because of looting and robbing and raping going on. Whenever you have a nation that is this perplexed and out of order, that's whenever the man upstairs comes in and says enough is enough, and brings horror and misery into everybody's life.
Flora had hoped exposing her father would protect her. What she doesn't know is the worst is still to come.
She had a dental chair in her first aid room that she would strap you into and drill your teeth.
The name of this program is called Exposing Evil. Exposing evil. If you don't have the right people on your side, sometimes it can be detrimental in the one that's doing the exposing. Whenever it comes to the Me Too movement here in America, may we always remember
He did the same.
that unless we have certain people on our sides pertaining to
Call or go online now to get 2 bottles.
pertaining to the Me Too movement, sometimes things can actually become worse than becoming better in regards to who you are and what sector of the community that you live in, providing the who, the what, the when, the how, and the where. It's really, really sad whenever you hear horror stories such as the horror stories that you're listening to about this young lady of bringing transparency to evil. And it's really, really sad whenever you have my brother and I, David Jeffrey Jackson, that died at the age of 51 in 2017, April 2017, right after Easter. And David and I looked at one another and felt like that we was Holocaust survivors because we had went through what we had went through out here in this community. But we was still alive to tell our story. Or David, and at that time was. No longer is David alive to be able to tell his story. So now I'm alive to tell both of our stories. Not just both of our stories, but the whole family's story towards what went on with the abusiveness that went on in our family, that obviously certain people in the community could care less about, knowing that they knew. I'm going to repeat it one more time, knowing that they knew, but they chose to cover it up and act as if that they didn't know it. Yes, it's difficult for me to come back living, working, breathing around people that I know had rebelled and people that I felt like had betrayed the family, and knowing that I still got to walk that walk towards having love in my heart for these people, knowing that I would prefer to go to the funeral, but also knowing that they know how I feel, and because of it, rather than a commotion happen in a sacred setting, I choose to stay at home. This hasn't just happened once. This hasn't just happened to me twice, but this has happened to me several times since I've moved back here in 2014. It's got to the point that I can't even go to the Cydonia barbecue pertaining to the fire department, because I'm afraid that whenever I do, some a-hole is going to say something or do something that's going to be inappropriate, to the point that a big commotion breaks out in the middle of a sacred site or a sacred setting, to where people aren't supposed to act that way out in the public. They're not supposed to act that way, period, but especially not out in the eyes of the public. Not in the 21st century. But yeah, whenever it comes to my socializing here locally, I'm very, very limited towards what I feel like that I either can do or can't do, towards either going to churches, going to funerals, going to barbecues, going to homecomings, going to stuff like that. Yeah, I'm very, very limited in what I feel like that I can do, as far as feeling awkward in going to these places.
12 years old. She is in her 4th year of repeated molestations at the hands of her father.
He didn't just choose me, he chose all of my sisters. He did the same thing to all of them.
Though she has reported him to people in the community, everyone is tied to the FLDS, and nobody questions the authority her father holds over his family.
If you end up in a home where there's bad abuse, you have nowhere to turn for help. I have a brother that was molesting us girls too. There was other men around that worked for my uncle and other men in the community, and they were molesting my sisters.
Flora lives in total fear, but during the family's annual 4th of July celebration, she hopes to get a reprieve from the terror her menacing dad instills.
We'd have this big get-together up in the canyon, and everybody'd go up there and celebrate. The whole family had left the house, and I'd run up to my room for something, and had no idea my dad was even in the house, or I wouldn't have even gone in. He was in his office, and he caught me. 4th of July was the day my dad fully raped me. Having a child's body, you are completely and totally unprepared for an attack of that nature. I bled quite a bit. I remember when it was over, going in the bathroom and just laying on the floor and watching under the door, because I thought he was going to come back. It just hurt so bad. When I filled the bathtub with water to try and wash it away, the water turned red, and I thought I was bleeding to death. And I just laid there for the longest time, begging God to just take me.
Over the next 2 years, Flora is twice impregnated by her father.
The first time, I beat myself in the stomach to get rid of it.
The second time Flora's dad impregnates her, her aunt conducts an abortion without using anesthetic. Her aunt says Flora is to blame.
She said that if I was more faithful, God wouldn't have permitted this to occur. That it was because of my unfaithfulness that God needed to punish me.
By 1984, Flora is in her 6th year of repeated molestation, rape, and abuse at the hands of her father. Though she has spoken out against him, the church community blames her, and her father continues coming back for more. So she decides escape is her only option. But the odds are stacked against her.
There's nothing but sagebrush and sand, and it's 35-minute drive in either direction to get to the next nearest town. In the desert, you can die from the heat during the day and freeze to death at night. When they notice you're gone, the men are called out and they are combing the desert.
Flora's only sliver of hope is in the form of a family rumored to be at odds with the FLDS authorities, a family Flora hopes might be willing to help. Meeting with them would be no easy task.
I was being watched by everybody. I was marked. Every move I did, everybody I talked to, every word I said was reported back.
The community does not want to draw outside attention to their way of life, and Flora has proven to everyone she is willing to speak out, so she poses a threat.
It becomes a community effort to patrol the lives of those who are rebellious. To speak to these people, you had to do it very late at night. You had to be very, very careful not to be seen.
One night, she manages to evade the watchful eye of her parents and the God Squad and make contact.
Getting to know these people and getting them to a point where they could feel that I wouldn't betray them was cultivated over about a 6-month, 9-month period. They were the first people that had ever taken a chance and stepped in to protect me.
Flora waits for the perfect opening. And finally, one night in May of 1984, she gets it. With her father working in the barn and the rest of her family busy with chores, Flora makes a break for it.
I was able to go to their house, and they had someone pick me up.
Knowing it's only a matter of time before she is discovered missing, Flora is transported to several locations in an effort to shake the God Squad's trail. Her life is now completely in the hands of strangers.
Oh my gosh, I was so scared. Going into people's homes, I had no idea who they were.
Flora winds up hiding out in Las Vegas under the secret protection of an older woman named Faye. But the safe house is still within reach of the FLDS.
Because the FLDS were hunting me, anytime I went out of the house, I had to disguise myself so that I wasn't spotted. There was a constant fear. My instincts have always been very acute when it comes to the FLDS men, the God Squad, and I could feel them coming. I could feel them walking up my back.
One day, while Faye is at work, Flora's worst fears are realized.
Went to the front window and peeked out the window, and driving very slow past the house was the Barlow Boys.
The Barlow Boys are notorious God Squad enforcers and sons of an FLDS elder.
I knew that if I didn't leave the house and they caught me there, that I was jeopardizing Faye. I knew that if they caught me in her house, they'd kill her. And I wasn't going to watch somebody else die for me. Meat function.
You might be asking, stuff like this doesn't really happen. Oh, yes, it does. Depending upon what area that you're at. Regardless whether you're in a big city or you're off into a confined area. Oh, yes, stuff like this does occur. Here in America, there's hidden pockets to where people protect wickedness and protect ungodliness. That's one reason why that
Faye, but she's not in the clear.
I'm glad that the I'm glad that the transparency of this confederacy has finally come full circle, because now we can put it all out there and hopefully finally get it in behind us towards what actually occurred, why it occurred, when it occurred, and label it towards what it actually was. It was a society of people that felt like that they wasn't being treated as fairly as the North, and they wanted their shot at the golden ring, which at that time was slavery, and that they thought that they could corner or market that same industry to the degree of becoming wealthy and rich like a lot of the people in the northern states had already become, off of slavery, off of free labor. That's what got involved in the Civil War. Though it may not have originally started out that way, that's what it turned into. Was a bunch of greedy, selfish people that was willing to die in having the same opportunity that the northern states did, because the southern states felt like that they was being beat or given the short end of the stick in mastering or marketing that particular market. That's what actually happened. And to this day, different pockets in different areas, depending upon who you are, where you are, can make all the difference in the world towards you coming out into the open and disclosing evil for what evil is doing and what evil has done, or rather not you get punished and sequestered because you're coming out with the truth, and now the rest of society is basically victimizing you, even though you was the one that was victimized to begin with. It's sad. It's sad that stuff like this still occurs in America in the 21st century, in 2020.
It's 1984, and Flora Jessup is on the run from her FLDS family. She's hiding out in Las Vegas under the protection of a woman named Faye. But she's not in the clear, because the God Squad is on the hunt.
I knew that if I didn't leave the house and they caught me, that I was jeopardizing Faye. That if they caught me in her house, they'd kill her. For the first time in my life, somebody besides Grandma had stood up. And I wasn't going to watch somebody else die for me.
It's the closest Flora has ever come to freedom, but it's a freedom Flora fears could cost Faye her life.
I jetted out the door, jumped the back fence, went through several neighbors' yards, and made my way down to the strip. Because I could have come from anywhere if I was down there.
After a successful escape from a life of torture, abuse, and fear, Flora decides she would rather return to the suffering than risk Faye's life.
I got down there. I made a phone call to my uncle's house and told him where I was at and told him, go ahead, send him to get me here.
Hoping the law might be on her side, Flora also reports her harrowing ordeal to government authorities.
Because I was a runaway and because of the abuse, I wasn't permitted to stay at my dad's house anymore, so I was placed in my Uncle Fred's custody.
Unfortunately for Flora, Uncle Fred's house is not an improvement. Fred is a powerful bishop with 5 wives of his own. Outside authorities might think his home is a safe option for Flora. But as far as the FLDS hierarchy is concerned, Fred's home is a place where Flora can be kept in line and hidden away.
They walled off the end of a hallway and made a room. When you opened the bed, you couldn't walk in the room.
In this home, it would not be the man who would torment Flora. It would be the first of her uncle's 5 wives, a menacing woman named Lydia.
My Uncle Fred was my dad's half-brother. My dad's mother passed. Lydia and Fred raised my dad and his siblings, and Lydia was extremely protective of my father. She particular interest in me, and I think it was because I spoke out against her favorite son. Lydia was the midwife the entire time I was growing up. We were taught that when the women gave birth, because Eve had given Adam the apple in the Garden of Eden 1,000,000 centuries ago, God had sentenced women to suffer nearly to death when they gave birth. And that was the price we had to pay for that apple. Lydia loved that and would tell us that all the time. You are here to suffer. She loved causing pain.
Flora is expected to help Lydia at the birthing center, and it is here where she discovers how sadistic her aunt is.
Lydia would tell a woman, I'm not ready to deliver your child yet. And she would make these women straddle these straight back chairs, legs apart, spread so it puts you straight down onto the wood. And there was one instance in particular where a child was very compromised. He was a vegetable for his entire life because his mother was made to sit on that chair for about 2 hours. My sister Joellen had a baby that was born with no legs and no arms. If it would have been female, they probably would have let her live, because with a girl, she can still have babies. But because it was a male and not able to contribute talent to the building of the Kingdom of Zion, he mysteriously died while he was being checked by the midwives. The entire backyard of my uncle's home outside of the hospital area was a mass graveyard of babies, and nothing grew back there. It's always been the dirty little secret.
Flora would find out all too soon that she is not immune from Aunt Lydia's torment, because Lydia is determined to punish Flora for the betrayal of her father.
There was a field down below the house, and I had a small window in my room. My horse would stand in that field every day and stare at the window. And then one day he just wasn't there. They tied him to the back of a truck and ran him until they ran him into the corner of a trailer. Did you hear the sound it made? Lydia had fun with that one, I can tell you. She got quite a kick out of describing to me how much he suffered when he died.
Lydia also comes up with a mystery concoction of drugs designed to keep Flora sedated and compliant.
They would tell you, take your vitamins. Made you feel really weird, and then you turn into a zombie. I was brought out of my room every day to clean in the birthing center. I became an example for every other girl in town. I was never permitted to do anything outside the presence of my uncle's wives. I became a slave.
But Lydia doesn't stop with drugs. She also submits Flora to repeated torture.
Lydia was a master at hurting you and not leaving marks. She would beat the bottoms of our feet with a cane. If you hit the bottom of your foot more than 1 or 2 times, they swell bad, and you can't walk. You can't run if you can't walk. She had a dental chair in her first aid room that she would strap you into and drill your teeth if you didn't answer her questions the way she wanted them answered. Finally, they broke broken me enough that I absolutely did not care anymore. And I just remember feeling like I was never going to escape. And I started looking for ways to make them kill me.
Flora is hopelessly trapped, but she would soon have an encounter with an unlikely friend who could give her one more shot at freedom.
I just looked at him and went, "Don't let him take me back."
Drivers, you all know why you're here.
Until a person has experienced something like this on the same level of realizing that there can be a conspiracy, and the word conspiracy means two or more people involved in this same action. Whenever there's a conspiracy of a group of people that's trying to tear you up, tear you down, and destroy you, with this many people involved, it is extremely hard for a person to break loose to be able to get any type of hope or any type of justice from the judicial system, because so many people are tied in to this system. That's what occurred in my life, in my family's life, not just my life, but David's life, my older brother's life, and Douglas Keith's life right here in this area, because the people was so closely knit. And even to this day, because of the things that I have spoke up about pertaining to various families and various communities, I'm still looked upon as being an oddball or a goofball, or I'm still looked upon as being the troublemaker, even though it's only me who is speaking up against the violations that was committed in my life towards being victimized. And there's many different ways that a person can become victimized. They can become victimized of not only the victim, but they can become victimized of the people around that know that person was becoming victimized, and no one was willing to stand up and say anything about it. Just as recently, within the past 4 or 5 years since I've come back and I've started pumping out a great deal of material, either on Facebook or YouTube, I'm still being victimized, isolated, ostracized by these churches around here that, instead of them embracing my testimony of it being the truth, I'm actually being double victimized by the community isolating themselves from me the way that they have, including these churches and including these law enforcement agencies around here. So yeah, evil recognizes evil, and evil sticks together thicker than thieves. And that's basically what you're listening to pertaining to this program that is labeled, hang on one second, get my glasses on. It's labeled Escape Evil, My Life in a Cult. Escaping Evil, My Life in a Cult, after years of suffering abuse at the hands of her father, Flora Jessop, Jessop, makes a daring escape from the fundamentals. And the way that I am reading here, it don't give out a whole lot of information of when this actually occurred. It's crimes of investigations is what it's on, just in case anybody wants to dig in and find out a little bit more about this. I'm going to listen just to a little bit more of it because it is kind of eerie, but I've got a lot of things that I have to do this afternoon. I'm glad that I have mixed emotions. I wish that I was close enough to the family that I could have went to Lenore Willis's funeral, but I'm glad that I didn't go. That way there wasn't going to be an episode happen down at Alamo Baptist Church. And I hate to put it as in a bittersweet type column, but that's exactly what it is to me right now. It's bittersweet. In other words, it's an oxymoron.
Authorities catch up with her and move her in with her uncle, where for nearly 3 years her Aunt Lydia repeatedly tortures her and keeps her sedated with a mixture of drugs.
I became this zombie, complacent, just existing. But I also stopped taking my meds, my vitamins. I just put them in the wall.
Now at age 16, it seems her only escape from this imprisonment is marriage, but it would be a polygamous marriage in which she would have no say.
A lot of the marriages are arranged, and in those arranged marriages, it's almost impossible to say no, because the prophet's rule is God's rule.
Flora fears an arranged marriage won't be any better than her current situation.
I come in on the last part of this program, and I'm just now figuring out this is pertaining to some of the Mormons' unethical practices or behaviors over in the Utah area, because it was talking a lot about Las Vegas that put it over in the right area. I'm just now figuring out, because it don't say nothing in the reading, and I've come in on the half part of this program, that I picked up on that this is something to do with the Mormons pertaining to being married and polygamy and these type of controlled freaks that want to control people's lives of a lawlessness situation like this. But the fact of the matter is, it just doesn't go on in the Nevada, Utah area. It goes on all over this country in different areas, in different pockets, especially if you're in a closely tight-knitted area, a community, to where everybody knows everybody. They can actually turn against you, and because you speak up, because you're part of the YouTube movement, now all of a sudden you become a victim by speaking out because you was a victim. That is still going on in my life to this day. I'm still being ostracized and looked down upon because I have told parts of my story in different intervals in different ways.
But then, an unexpected opportunity arises one day when all the wives, including Aunt Lydia, are called away from the home for an emergency at the birthing center.
The attention was pulled off of me, and I just walked away from the house and just continued walking. My cousin Philip was driving to his mom's house when he saw me, and I flagged him down, and we were standing there on Main Street talking.
Just being seen in public with Philip poses a danger to both of them.
Any association between male and female outside of your immediate family is considered a sexual encounter, even if you're standing on the middle of a public street, because it is not a priesthood-sanctioned association.
Flora's cousin is not considered immediate family, and the God Squad has labeled Flora a troublemaker, making this an even dicier encounter.
The God Squad came. We gotta go. And I just looked at him and went, "Don't let him take me back." So we took off down the creek bed. We lost him.
Flora's cousin knows she has a reputation as an agitator, and fearful of being punished for conspiring with her, his resolve is shaken.
They knew who he was. They knew who I was. So Philip went home.
Church elders fear that once free from the community, Flora may expose their dark secrets and threaten their way of life. And her father wants her soul to help him build his heavenly kingdom. The God Squad hunts her down through the night, but it's her father who finds her.
I was sitting down on the edge of the creek, and my dad came and found me.
Good.
And he said, well, you have a choice. You've been compromised by being alone with Philip. You are either marrying Philip today, or you are going to the mental institution because you're out of control. And I looked at him and I said, looks like we're having a wedding today.
Flora, you get back here right now!
Flora's father has no idea her cousin and future husband is also disillusioned with the church.
Once more, putting this young girl's life at stake in making her make decisions that either she was going to do this or do that, or suffer the consequences by going to a mental institution. The same transparency got brought into my life whenever I went to Kenton, Tennessee, towards exposing what was going on in my family, of the brutality that I had just went through pertaining to my life almost being taken. I was basically forced to go to a mental institution, of being branded like I was wacko, like I was the one that was sick, like I was the one that needed to be put away. And the whole time, it was the people over in Kenton, Tennessee that was protecting a sicko pertaining to my biological father, James Robert Jackson. It just shows you how wicked will cover up wicked and support other people that are wicked. It shows you how close-knit that a community can become, because they admired my father because my father fought in World War II. And in a lot of people's eyes around here, my father was a hero to them. And no matter what my father done, it didn't matter, as long as he left breath in our lungs and didn't completely kill us, my father could not do no wrong in this community. That's what I had to go through. And similar people has to go through similar situations based around being at the wrong place with the wrong group of people that didn't have the umption of taking care of them during the time that situations was growing dire. Even as an adult, me standing out and coming back here in 2014, realizing how the community was attacking me, various people throughout the community was attacking me, and the other people stood idly by and sniggered and laughed and was being entertained by what was going on down here at 291 Thompson Road, or 430 Beach Grove Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. It speaks volumes about the people that are still living in this community, in this area, to this day. You know, if I was just talking about something that happened 30, 35, 40, 50 years ago, that's one thing. But to think that these actions are still embedded into the generations below those generations and embedded into other generations, and thinking that they can come out here and bully, violate, do the things that they're doing to innocent people's lives while others sit around sniggering and laughing over it, once more speaks volumes about the kind of people that chose not to want to support the Windmill Ministries 30 plus years ago, and now the countryside has been turned totally upside down, and they're still trying to point their finger at me saying that it was my fault or I was wrong. No, the Windmill Ministries was not wrong in disclosing the truth about the Bible. The Windmill Ministries did not fail the people, but rather than the people failed the ministry. This is an evil, demonic society that I was raised up around, and that other people have been raised up around. And until evil does a full face in putting evil in its right place, we as a society here in America, I'm afraid, are going to go through more grief and more despair until these things are properly addressed. Thank you for listening, and good luck to all of us pertaining to what we're going to have to experience and go through in the future. God bless, and shalom.